Some men test luck. Some men test patience. But these bikers, they tested the wrong family. She was just trying to work. Wheels instead of legs, tray instead of shield, a smile instead of armor. To the drunks in leather, she was an easy punchline, a target they could shove, spill, and laugh at without consequence. They thought it was funny, mocking a waitress in a wheelchair. They thought it was safe, because to them she was alone. But then the door swung open, and in walked Jason Statham. Not as the movie star, not as the fighter, but as her father. The bar thought it was about to witness another cruel joke. What they were really about to see was a reckoning. The place was the kind of bar where neon lights burned too bright, masking the stale smell of beer soaked into the wooden floors. A jukebox croaked out a half-dead country song in the corner. Glasses clinked. Laughter echoed. The kind of laughter that grows too loud, too sharp, fueled not by joy but by cruelty. At the center of it all was her. Emily. A waitress who had learned long ago how to balance plates with precision, how to roll her chair through narrow aisles smoother than any man could walk, how to smile at strangers even when the world sneered back. She didn't complain. She didn't falter. She simply worked, because that's what you do when life knocks you down and doesn't bother giving you legs to stand back up on. But bikers don't see that. Not these bikers. They saw wheels instead of strength. They saw weakness instead of will. They saw an opportunity to be cruel. The leader of the pack, broad-shouldered, tattoos crawling up his neck, beard stained with beer foam, slammed his glass down as Emily rolled past with a tray of drinks. "Careful, sweetheart," he barked, nudging his buddy. "Don't roll over my boots. These cost more than your chair." The table erupted in laughter, a cruel, throaty chorus. Emily didn't flinch, not outwardly. She had practiced this, holding composure like a mask, but her knuckles whitened against the tray, the slightest tremor running through her hand as she set the drinks down on another table. The bikers weren't done. Men like this never stop at one joke. "I bet she's got a handicap ramp in her dating life too." Another one slurred, his belly quaking with his own laughter. "She doesn't need speed, she's already got wheels," another cackled. The others banged their fists on the table like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. The whole bar turned its head, some patrons chuckling nervously, others pretending not to notice. That was the thing about bullies. It wasn't about being clever. It was about being louder than anyone else. Emily wheeled herself to the counter, set the tray down, and drew a slow breath. She had been here before. Not this bar, not these men, but this moment. Always this moment. The moment where she had to decide, swallow it down, let the cruelty roll off her, or risk everything by pushing back. She chose silence. Not because she was weak, but because the world had taught her that fighting back rarely won. The bikers saw her silence as permission. That was their mistake. Because silence wasn't weakness that night. It was the calm before the storm. The door creaked open. Boots stepped across the threshold, heavy, purposeful. Jason Statham walked in. Not fast, not loud, just steady, like a storm cloud rolling across the horizon. He didn't need to announce himself. The bar felt it. The jukebox seemed quieter. The laughter dimmed, not because they wanted to stop, but because some instinct buried deep warned them. Jason scanned the room once, his eyes landing on Emily, his daughter. He didn't need to hear the jokes. He didn't need to see the bikers sneering. He saw her face. That was enough. Emily caught sight of him, and for the first time that night her mask slipped. Relief flickered across her eyes, not because she expected him to fight her battles. She never asked that of anyone, but because she knew when Jason Statham walked in, she wasn't alone anymore. The bikers didn't know who he was yet. To them, he was just another man walking into a bar, just another pair of boots hitting the floor. But they would learn. Jason moved to the counter, nodding once to Emily as he sat. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. His presence alone was a shield. The leader of the bikers, oblivious to the storm he was summoning, leaned back in his chair and barked loud enough for the whole bar to hear. "Oi, look at that. Baldy's here for dinner too. Hope you don't mind the service is on wheels." The laughter came again, cruder, meaner, the kind of laughter that stank of alcohol and insecurity. Jason's jaw flexed once, twice. He set his hands on the counter, calm, steady, but his knuckles whitened against the wood. Emily's hand trembled as she poured him a coffee. She slid the cup to him, her lips parting like she wanted to say something, but Jason gave the smallest shake of his head. Not yet. He sipped his coffee, slow, deliberate. The steam curled up past his face. His silence was louder than their noise. The bikers noticed, and men like that don't take silence well. The leader shoved back his chair, boots stomping against the floor as he sauntered toward Emily. His grin was wide, cruel, soaked in beer. "Hey, sweetheart," he drawled, circling her wheelchair like a predator. "Bet you're faster than the rest of the waitresses, eh? Bet you can spin donuts in the parking lot. Why don't you give us a show?" He reached down, grabbed the handle of her chair, and yanked it back a few inches. Emily gasped, her tray clattering to the ground. Plates shattered. Food splattered across the floor. The bar went silent. Jason set his coffee cup down. Slowly, carefully. The scrape of ceramic against wood sounded like a drumbeat, a countdown. He rose, smooth, controlled, no wasted motion, no rush. The leader looked up just in time to see Jason standing there, his face unreadable, his eyes cold. "What's this then?" the biker sneered. "Baldy here gonna play hero?" Jason tilted his head. His voice when it came was low, calm but sharp enough to cut glass. "She's not a joke." The biker laughed, too loud, too forced. His friends joined in, their laughter echoing through the bar. Jason didn't laugh. He didn't move. He simply stepped closer, one step, then another, each footfall heavy enough to shake the air. The leader tried to keep grinning, but Jason's silence pressed on him like weight. "Back off, mate," the biker barked, his voice cracking just slightly. "We're just having a laugh." Jason's eyes burned into him. "She's not your laugh." The bar held its breath. And for the first time that night, the bikers felt it, the shift, the realization that they weren't the loudest men in the room anymore, that they weren't the predators, that maybe, just maybe, they were the prey. The leader of the bikers blinked, caught between arrogance and unease. His buddies snickered behind him, egging him on, their laughter a mask to hide the creeping chill that Jason's presence brought into the room. Jason didn't blink, didn't move. His silence pressed harder than any insult, any shove. The leader spat on the floor, trying to reclaim his swagger. "You don't scare me, old man." Jason tilted his head slightly, his voice like gravel sliding across steel. "I'm not here to scare you." The biker frowned. "Then what the hell you here for?" Jason stepped closer, his shadow cutting across the man like a blade. "I'm here to end this." The air snapped taut. The leader puffed his chest, shoving Jason's shoulder with an open palm, a cheap move, a test. Jason didn't move an inch. His body didn't sway, his feet didn't shift. It was like pushing against a wall of stone. The biker's bravado faltered for a fraction of a second. Jason saw it, the hesitation, the crack. And then he moved. Fast, too fast. Jason's hand shot up, grabbing the biker's wrist mid-shove. A twist, a jerk. A sharp pop echoed as the man howled, his body collapsing to one knee, wrist bent at an angle wrists weren't meant to bend. The bar gasped. Jason's voice stayed calm. "Lesson 1, don't touch my daughter." He let go, and the biker crumpled against the table, clutching his arm, his face pale under the tattoos. The other bikers stood now, scraping chairs against the floor. 3 of them. Big men, fueled by alcohol and pack instinct. They circled like wolves, sneers plastered over faces that were starting to look less confident than they wanted. Jason's eyes swept over them, calm, calculating. He didn't raise his fists yet. He didn't need to. One lunged first, swinging wide. Jason sidestepped, caught the man's elbow and drove his knee up into the biker's gut. The man folded, coughing up beer and bile, before Jason shoved him headfirst into the jukebox. The music stuttered, then cut off completely, leaving only the sound of ragged breathing and shocked silence. The second biker charged with a roar, aiming a fist at Jason's jaw. Jason ducked, hooked the man's legs with a sweep, and slammed him flat onto the sticky floor. His head cracked against the boards, the thud echoing through the bar like a drumbeat. The third hesitated, eyes darting between his fallen friends and Jason's unblinking stare. He tried to put on a grin, but it quivered. "You don't know who you're messing with," he spat. Jason stepped closer, lowering his voice until it was nearly a growl. "No, you don't." The biker swung, desperate, sloppy. Jason caught the fist midair, twisted, and drove the man's face into the bar counter. Glass shattered, blood sprayed, and the man crumpled, groaning. 3 down, one clutching his broken wrist. Jason turned back to the leader, who was still hunched, pale and sweating. The bar was dead silent now, every eye locked on the man in the black jacket, who moved with the precision of a soldier and the wrath of a father. Jason crouched, meeting the leader's eyes. "You think it's funny, pushing a woman in a chair, mocking someone who's fought harder every day of her life than you've ever fought for anything." The biker stammered, words tripping over his fear. I didn't mean." Jason's voice cut like a knife. "You meant every word." He grabbed the man's shirt, hauling him up like he weighed nothing, and slammed him against the wall. Plates rattled, glasses tipped over. Jason leaned close, his words sharp enough to brand themselves into the man's memory. "You'll remember this every time you walk into a bar, every time you open your mouth to laugh at someone weaker. You'll remember her face, and mine." The man's lip quivered. Jason dropped him. He hit the floor with a thud, gasping like a fish on dry land. Jason straightened his jacket, his breathing calm, controlled. His eyes swept the room. The bikers were groaning piles on the floor. The rest of the bar sat frozen, mouths agape, too afraid to breathe too loud. Emily watched from behind the counter, her eyes wide. She'd seen her father fight before, but this was different. This wasn't just fists and reflex. This was him, raw, unflinching, unstoppable. Jason turned, walking back to the counter. He picked up his coffee again, took a slow sip, like nothing had happened. The bar stayed silent. Finally, Emily's voice broke it, quiet, shaken. "Dad." Jason looked at her, just looked, and in his eyes she saw it, not anger, not fury, but something else, a promise. "You're not alone," he said softly. Her throat tightened. For the first time that night, she didn't feel like she had to hold it all in. She wasn't just a waitress in a chair. She wasn't a target. She was his daughter. And that meant no one, not a pack of bikers, not the cruelest man alive, would ever break her alone again. Jason turned back to the bikers, sprawled and broken. "Get out," he said. They scrambled, dragging each other toward the door, stumbling, groaning, clutching ribs and faces. No swagger left, no laughter, just fear. The bar stayed silent until the door slammed shut. Then slowly applause, not loud, not wild, just a few scattered claps that grew into a wave. Customers, truckers, old men at the counter, young couples in the booths, they all clapped, not for the fight, not for the violence, but for the moment, for the silence Jason had carved into cruelty. Jason didn't smile. He didn't bow. He simply set his money on the counter, more than enough to cover his coffee, and stood. "Come on, Emily," he said. She wheeled out from behind the counter, her head high, her hands steady. The bar watched as the two of them walked, one on wheels, one on boots, through the door and into the night. And in that silence, every person in that room understood something those bikers never had. Respect isn't taken. It's earned. And Jason Statham, he just taught them the hardest way possible.